sorry, whoever, thanks Laura for starting.
Sorry.
Actually makes a really big difference. So we're in the Bay Area, for example, and our biggest issue in terms of emissions here is actually transportation. So shipping and also commuting, travel within the state, because we live in a mild climate and because the state has made some efforts to bring down emissions on the electricity grid. That's going to be very different than New York, for example. So don't feel like it's a compromise. If you can't track energy, you know, maybe shipping is where you should be focusing your energy and your attention. So doing what you can is not necessarily a bad compromise. All right, should we move on to energy? Yes, can't see you all. Okay, so energy use in buildings does tend to be a major source of greenhouse gas emissions for art spaces, especially for those in less mild climates that are using heat and air conditioning and climate control, like humidity control on a regular basis. Some key things you can do, even if you don't have control over your building or your system, you can start understanding building emissions. April 7th, we will have a guest speaker speaking specifically about that and what it means to have an energy efficient building. You can implement very simple low-cost steps to reduce energy consumption, and Art and Climate Action has actually compiled a list of those, drawing on various reliable sources. So have a look at that link. Do what you can within those suggestions. So lighting often constitutes a really large share of emissions for arts institutions. We all know how much we are obsessed with good lighting when it comes to artwork, but it can be also very energy intensive. So make a commitment and understand what your investment will be to replace your lighting with low or more efficient LEDs at the end of a bulb's life. If you can switch to a reputable green energy supplier, do so. In California, in the Bay Area, that's a pretty simple thing to do, although it is more expensive. If it's a small space, like a house-sized space, usually it's less than $10 a month. But larger spaces use more energy, but you can always take the action of actually writing to your utility company and saying, hey, what are your plans and what would the difference be in terms of price? A key thing that we're going to have to do nationwide is decarbonizing our buildings in a universal effort. This means, first of all, electrifying them, getting rid of natural gas use within appliances or within the building in general. Improving insulation and efficiency. So a number of local governments are actually putting plans together to do this publicly in terms of policy that will apply to everyone. I know Berkeley, for instance, has one of the first plans. I think Oakland is about to publish their plan for decarbonizing buildings. Ask your local leaders if they have a plan. And again, if they don't, tell them that they need to get on top of it. Laura, do you know of comparable plans in New York right now?
Yeah, New York City is, for any of you that are here, is also kind of a nationwide forward thinker in this, and is implementing a decarbonization plan for emissions reductions by 2030 and by 2050. It's applying mostly to buildings that are at a larger scale than most of our galleries are, unless our galleries are part of a larger residential or office building. But that means that those resources are being developed. Some of the IRA money is going into that, and in general, the LL97 legislation is going to be rapidly rolling out to the city. In terms of green energy, it's a little bit, the suppliers here are not as easy to tap into in a reputable way. Charles Moffat Gallery, one of the participants in 8x8, their action point for this is that they did switch to green mountain energy, and they are committing to seeing how that goes for the year, and then at the end of this year reporting out to the rest of our gallery community, was it worth it? What did the energy bill end up being, and was the actual energy source that they were getting, did it feel like it was a positive effect? And I know some of the other galleries that we're talking to are looking into what it looks like to do community solar or other options. And hopefully New York will provide some better background, easily available options in the years to come.
Right. And I will say, if you're not familiar with what the options are in your given city, well, let me put it this way. If you live in California or New York, we have done a lot of that research. So please contact us and we will point you in the right direction. That there are
Right,
a
not
lot of
wrong.
like offsetting schemes that are not helpful. So we will make sure you're getting to the best possible option that we know of. Obviously, individual research is also really appreciated, and sharing any reliable information that you come across is also incredibly helpful. All right. Does anyone have any questions or suggestions? No, not at the moment. All right. Let's keep moving. You'll also see within this document that, again, we'll send to attendees that there are resources, websites that we know are helpful. So you can always check those out as a sort of a starting point. Laura, do you want to take shipping?
Sure, and maybe we'll go through this a little bit quickly because I know we're probably going to short on time for doing all of this. Shipping in general, air freight is like the big area. So finding ways to either reduce the weight or content of your shipments so that they are consolidated, and opting for road or sea freight instead of air freight is like the big one. For smaller teams, I know that you may not actually be doing that much air freight or maybe working with local artists. That's great. There are other, like that can be part of your climate action 8x8 plan, that you are acknowledging that this is something that you are paying attention to over the course of the year, to make sure that's a practice that's continued. The Gallery Climate Coalition has a shipper sustainable services survey, and asking your shipping partners to participate in that can be a great point for collective action, community building, and having conversations around this. And yeah, considering, do you really need a specialized art shipper, and how can you talk to your clients and partners? I think that for me, one of the most exciting action areas around shipping is inviting your clients and artists into the conversation. So instead of just going by default, the fastest shipment option available, then telling your clients, like, you could have this in the next few days and it would cost this much, but it would be this much carbon, or we could ship it by sea or road, or have some other consolidated or group shipment that would get it to you a little bit later, but this would be the positive environmental impact. And that's really almost less about reducing your own emissions around shipping and increasing the fluency and expectations around having conversations like that with our clients, so it becomes more of a standard norm.
Right. Cool. Any questions about shipping? Not at the moment. So one of the most important things you can do, just to reiterate what Laura already said, is to tell your shippers that you want them to be transparent about their practices and that you want them to start moving towards best practices as quickly as possible. It's one thing for us, like groups like Art and Climate Action, to be contacting shippers, but I'm personally not doing any art shipping. Their clients are. And the message I'm getting from shippers is, we'll do what the clients want us to do, but we need to hear from them. So please use your voice. It's a huge step. All right, travel. Again, there's one area that's just a huge majority of emissions when it comes to travel, and that's flights, especially business class or first class travel. So we have created some action ideas in terms of commuting by low carbon means or zero carbon means. If you're already doing that, you can move on to your research travel, trying to consolidate trips, making sure that you're flying as little as possible. And then when you are flying, you are flying economically, basically. It's a little bit of a value shift sometimes. I know that it's a big prestige moment to offer a guest speaker or an artist sometimes business class travel. Maybe we can communicate with our partners and express why we don't want to go with that option. It's a matter of just having the conversation more often than not. Also check out what policies or benefits are available in your area to incentivize travel by public transportation or by low carbon means. I know in California we have a lot, and if you're aware of what benefits are available, all the better. Make sure that you're taking advantage of those. Any comments? All right. As the co-founder of Barter, Laura, I'm going to let you take waste.
Great. I think that the number one thing around waste is planning ahead and making sure that as we're leading into exhibition cycles, art fairs, any operations that we're doing, like almost all of the other things that are on the waste bullet point list for small spaces that we have are you planning ahead and are you giving yourself time in order to be thoughtful about your exhibition material and what's happening after? Creating an exhibition material afterlife checklist for exhibitions and art fairs is one of the first things we have on here, and that really is about embedding a plan for material, anything that you're purchasing or sourcing for the sake of an exhibition into the planning phase and giving yourself a chance to make a responsible decision about what's going to happen to that afterwards. There's a lot of other great individual bullet points. Obviously, as the co-founder of Barter, then source or share things on barter.art after to promote circular material reuse in the sector. But there's also a ton of other local networks that might make sense. And we have some links to some of those resources here. We had EcoSet on our last call. In order to, EcoSet was on our GCC call, not this call. Yeah, in order to participate and find any of these, and it's really just about giving yourself time to slow down and plan ahead to make responsible choices around these things.
Mm-hmm. Laura, can you, Andrew was just asking, can you give a 1-minute explanation of what Barter is?
Barter is a resource sharing tool for the art world. It is essentially a peer-to-peer exchange network where you can post things like crates, pedestals, AV equipment, some of the things that we most commonly use in the art sector on an exhibition basis that we are sourcing and then offloading directly after. So it's essentially drawing a circle around your local community and your arts community so that you can have a shared inventory of pedestals that you can all source from, of crates that you can pull as you need, and other types of commonly used exhibition material.
Awesome. One thing to keep in mind, something like Barter, it's a matter of you have to talk to your neighbors. If there is one person or one institution that's posting to Barter, that's not going to get it circulating in the way that it can. So again, using your voice, opening up the conversation, telling your neighbors, hey, I'm very interested in reusing and sharing, say, installation materials, crates, etc. I know that there's this platform. Can we give it a try? Can we spread the word? That's how these things will take off. It's not an individual's sole capacity to make it work. All right, support workers. This was an interesting one to think about from the perspective of an individual. What would it mean if you are like a team of 1 or 2? And I think that, again, it's a matter of communication, letting your clients and your partners know what your priorities are, and always prioritizing climate conscious decisions from the get-go of a project, making sure that you and your colleagues have sufficient personal time to, have the energy and wherewithal and creativity to make better choices. Almost inherently, when we get pressed for time, we start making climate unfriendly decisions. So giving yourself breathing room and scheduling room to actually make the right choice is absolutely imperative. Another thing is, again, just speaking up when you hear people complaining about bad traffic or utility bills or the price of gasoline. You can always gently nudge them, tell them the solutions that you found. This doesn't require being on a soapbox if that's intimidating, although soapbox, if you're game for it, all the better. I can say that like in my neighborhood, because people know what I'm doing professionally, now I am officially the neighborhood, where should I go to get a heat pump person, which feels great. And so these actions can seep out into your neighborhood, whether that's a neighborhood or a community of fellow arts businesses or personally. It's a matter of making sure the conversation gets out there and in the way that it's going to be heard and received well. All right, climate justice, Laura, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, the only other thing that I'll say for support workers is like so much of cultivating a like mindset of extraction. If you are doing it in one area, you're doing it in all areas. Generally, the way we do one thing is the way we do everything. So like respect yourself, respect time that you need for yourself, and that like if you're taking yourself seriously and like what your body needs, like you are part of the planet, which means that you're taking what the planet needs seriously. And that's kind of like the first step to breaking some of the cognitive dissonance that we exist in around these two areas. For climate justice, then I feel like one of the most important things for especially small spaces and one of the most rewarding things that we can do are connecting with whatever local community initiatives are existing around climate justice, whether that's mutual aid supporting local communities, if there are local either environmental protection agencies or initiatives that are happening, find ways that you can actually embed your art space into the community-wide climate justice conversation and bring some of the stuff that we're doing outside of just the art sector into the broader areas that the climate crisis is affecting so directly.
And then collective action, again, just participating in climate action 8x8 is an instance of collective action, a really powerful one. We are up to 24 signees, and think that that will grow over the next month, which is fantastic. And so thank you for already, if you have signed on to participate, if you're formulating your plan, that's awesome. A key point, going back to the idea of supporting workers, making sure that you have the support you need, joining a group like Galleries Commit, Artists Commit, Art and Climate Action, basically ensures that you're going to have colleagues who are like-minded, have similar goals, and who can support you when you're feeling frustrated or that you don't know what the best action is to take. Telling them about telling your colleagues about the direction in which you're moving and that sustainability is important to you is absolutely vital. And again, think about ways to extend these actions beyond the space of your gallery or museum. Maybe that means going to a town hall meeting that is climate oriented or climate justice oriented. Sending out an email to family and friends, making sure that you're participating and aware of what's going on globally and nationally, that you're a regular voter. I mean, major impact happens when climate-oriented thinking sort of infiltrates all parts of our lives. So again, any suggestions of collective action beyond these ones are more than welcome. And we're really happy that you all are here and that you are putting plans together. Maybe the best way is to, let's see, should we just continue here, Laura, in case there are questions or ideas? And
yeah, I know it's 1, and we try to keep these meetings kind of at the 12:30 to 1 mark so that you guys can all do the rest of the things that you need for your day. But Jody and I will stick around for a little bit. So if any of you are in the midst of making your climate action 8x8 plan, a couple of housekeeping announcements on that. We had initially been asking for submitted plans by March 31st, by the end of this month. We are extending that deadline to be a softer deadline, essentially sign on by March 31st, but as long as you have a plan and take that action within 2023 and submit an end of year report, like that is fine. If you are working on that plan, if you have any questions, if you are considering signing on but aren't quite sure if it's right for you, this is, yeah, we can stick around and like hopefully resolve some of those. And for anyone who does have a few minutes, then maybe to kick off, if anyone has like if anyone who hasn't yet submitted a plan, if you want to let us know like the current status of your plan or like what you're thinking or where you're at in that, for any of you that gave me a thumbs up earlier that you were doing one.
I'll chime in.
mm-hmm.
I would just want to emphasize, thank you guys both. I think I just want to emphasize for smaller capacity organizations that the baby steps are so important because you expand your and others, your team's capacity for just, understanding the needs of your business in respect to these really important tools. And once you expand that kind of tolerance and understanding, it just snowballs from there, and you start noticing more information out there in the field and bringing more information in. And I think part of worker support is to, and I think you guys said this, but to, when you have staff meetings, to really encourage this as a topic in terms of getting people's mindset organized around these issues, basically in every thing that you do, and including programming. And even if your exhibition schedule doesn't fit with some climate-based work, you can, like, programming, and so many artists are even tangentially working on these issues around an environment or our relationship to environment. So that, I would say, is also key to kind of the DNA, getting this stuff in our cultural world, but also our work, our industry. So anyway, thank you both. This is really helpful.
Thank you, Svea. Yeah, definitely. It's hard to be the person who's always speaking up. It can feel conspicuous, but it's also absolutely the key to shifting mindsets and conversation, and making sure that this is on the table in the same way like budget priorities are on the table or scheduling priorities are on the table. Thinking about audience and reception at a planning meeting, like also considering what a climate impact is going to be at each step, I think is really key. Great.
I think I saw maybe Andrew or Kiki unmute, but maybe I imagined both of those situations. Maybe I hopefully wished that I saw both of those situations.
I was just going to mention, hi, I'm Andrew from Andre Rosen Gallery in New York. There's definitely the will for us to submit a plan for 8x8 and to basically to use this initiative as a way to structure some existing commitments. But anyway, just a kind of placeholder. We're working on it, coming off of a busy period, but hoping that within the next month we'll be able to, have sufficient meetings within our team to put something down.
Yeah, that's great. And a couple plans that have come through recently. We just had Francis Irv Gallery submit a plan today, which is like a super small, like 1-2 person run gallery opened by some like Gen Z, like new people in the Chinatown Mall. And like their entire plan is essentially like condensing actions 1 through 7 into, we commit to this year, like reflecting thoughtfully on each of these areas and doing like a seasonal audit. So like a spring, summer, and fall climate impact report that addresses all of these areas, so that by the end of the year, as we kind of have our first year of operations, we can come up with a plan that incorporates these in like a meaningful way into next year. We've had a few conversations like that for larger institutions too, where the problem is not that like you're so small that you're not sure what to do, but the problem is like you're so big that you're not sure what you can do. And like the idea of your climate action 8x8 commitment plan can literally just be that in each of these 8 action areas, we commit by the end of this year to come up with a climate policy by the end of the year that will help us direct future action plans in the future. So like incorporating each of these areas in a way that is both meaningful but manageable to teams of any scale.
Right. It's true. Laura,
Jody,
sorry, I was going to say, did you put in the chat the plans that have already been published?
I will put that in the chat right now.
Yeah.
Jody, Laura, I was going to ask, maybe you could share any funding resources that might be available in helping some of these organizations or individuals with any of the particular action areas.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so at present, the 3 big funders of things, climate in the arts are Tiger Foundation, the Frankenthaler Climate Initiative, and that deadline is coming up on March 31st, I believe. And actually the NEH just put a new call out for grant applications for climate action plans for cultural institutions, humanities institutions, including museums. Now, those are going to be for bigger infrastructural change. When it comes to funding for smaller change, for not necessarily like putting solar and batteries on your building, or putting I don't know, a new HVAC system in, it's really helpful to look at your local officials, your local utilities. Very often there are rebates, especially for small businesses, to make building upgrades, or even availability in some cities of like having a climate or an engineering specialist come walk through your building and just see and recommend particular upgrades for your space. I know, like in Palo Alto, and I believe in San Jose, you can just call your utility company and say, in Marin County where I live, you can call and say, hey, come to my house, tell me where all of my energy is going, and what options might be available for improving that system.
And I'll give a small shout out with Artist Commit right now. Artist Commit, thanks to the Tiger Foundation, has a little bit of funding remaining to support artists and presenting partners that are doing climate impact reports for exhibitions. And so that provides you with a Artist Commit mentor that can help walk you through the steps of a climate impact report. Depending on what the institution or the artist needs, it also potentially includes a stipend for the artist, a stipend for the material, a stipend for the presenting partner, and an optional material stipend if there are actual expenses required in order to improve the climate impact. And that funding is still there, so reach out to us, but it's not necessarily there forever, so reach out to us soon if you want to take advantage of it.
And then also, another thing to keep in mind is just the savings inherent in some of these actions. If you're consolidating research trips and flights, if you are using ground transport as opposed to air transport, your bills are already coming down. That requires the mental shift and the scheduling shift to make sure that those things are possible. But almost at every turn, a sustainable change equals a savings in terms of overall expenses.
And then on the flip side of that, then we are also offering, through Climate Action 8x8, then Galleries Commit, GCCLA, and Art and Climate Action are all committed to providing some pro bono support to people who are putting together plans and helping shape those and frame those and having a conversation. And then we also offer affordable but paid consulting options for people who might want more hand-holding and want a little bit, don't necessarily want to bring on a full team member internal sustainability hire, but do want a little added support for an internal green team. Both of those are options to reach out to us about.
Is there anything else we can help about? So I've had the opportunity of actually looking through the published plan so far, and honestly thinking about, okay, so if we end up with the 24, just the 24 who have already signed up with comparable plans ranging from, multinational huge galleries to very small single-person teams, two-person teams, there's an incredible range of action that is happening, and that becomes its own resource of ideas and steps that can take this further as we move forward. So it's important, especially if you're in a smaller place, to recognize your own power and agency, and that when your actions are magnified by the multiples of everyone who is signing on, it really does have a huge impact.
Okay, any other final questions, thoughts, feedback, heart emoji reactions? We'll accept anything before we end the call. Otherwise, we will see you. We host these. Oh, I see Juana has a raised hand, maybe?
Yes, hi. Thank you so much. It's my first time joining your meetings, and I've been following your work. But again, because it's the first time that I'm here with you guys, I was wondering if you discussed climate action issues around extractivism, especially when it comes to forest protection and, you know, the Amazon being one of the main forests that is actually in danger, and that is also completely relevant when it comes to our actions in terms of what we can do or we are not aware of that we can do in terms of bringing attention to things that we you know, incorporate into the practices that directly go into fit in illegal mining, directly go into a lot of practices that we think that we have nothing to do with, and it turns out that corporations are completely invested in that. And so I just wonder if you have any resources or if you've been thinking about this from this perspective too.
Yeah, we actually, Galleries Commit has a partnership with an organization called Art to Acres, and Art to Acres is an artist-founded nonprofit that supports large-scale permanent land conservation, primarily in South America and the Amazon and other kind of regional areas there. And we have been lucky to conserve almost 300,000 acres of permanent. It's generally that like form of protection is permanent legal protection for spaces that maybe already have some form of like informal conservation, but like need additional like rangers on site, signage, and legal protection to enforce it for local communities. So that has been one of the goals for that was to give art sector people kind of an easy on-ramp for a first action step. So it's a carbon conservation as well as a forest conservation action, and it kind of like guides a conversation with a team of better understanding their climate impact, better understanding their carbon emissions, and then also making a donation to large-scale land conservation in a kind of collective, like the art sector as a whole is coming together to like conserve a specific area.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm aware of their work too, but yeah, I'm just, you know, maybe I'm gonna be more direct in terms of, is there any resource or have you been aware of lists specifically of those companies that actually are doing this? Because there's all of the carbon offsetting and all of this sadly fits the neoliberal capitalist agenda in the destruction of these areas. So I'm just wondering if, and not that you have to know, I'm just curious because I'm trying to gather that kind of information. It's really relevant for a field, but also for any other field, precisely because they're so, I mean, the level of greed of these corporations is crazy, and the marketing efforts are really good. So it's really hard to see who's behind what. And it's really shocking and really sad to see how we're implicated in working with some of these corporations. But it's, because one thing I think is fantastic that the reforestation and support of the forest, but then there's, you know, the bigger impact that is happening day to day. So anyone who knows anything about this or the actual efforts and research behind who is having an impact in where it, because it's really hard to find it again, because the marketing is excellent.
Yeah, breaking through greenwashing is really, really hard. And that's people who are actually making claims. Then there's just everything else. It's very hard to track down, which I think is one reason it's so important to build out this network of people who are trying to investigate this. You know, like in the document we were looking at, I called out Uline and Home Depot as being just like, if you can boycott Uline and Home Depot, please do it. Because of the funding of policy and campaigns that is counterproductive. But on individual companies, I don't right now know of lists that I can absolutely say are reliable, but I think the more that we're able to crowdsource that information, the better. And so as you come across it, if you're willing to share, we would love to have that information as well.
Yeah, thank you. No, there's, you know, sadly, even board members sitting in a museum. I mean, there is, as you said, greenwashing / art washing is serious. And you can see that even these people are supporting these kind of efforts as a way to actually not be targeted for what they are doing in a huge scale that we cannot even think about with their companies, you know, that actually are located in other parts of the world. So, but if anyone is interested, that's my focus right now. So that's why I wanted to hear from you. So and thank you so much for all the work you do. It's really great.
Absolutely.
And the other resource I would point to is the climate action database that we have on, I think, both of our websites, which is not that list, but it does try to find like vetted vendors or sources for things like packing materials or shipping or things that like it's not like a list of people not to use, but it is a list of like some alternative options that you can seek out.
Right.
Yeah, and I think there's some interesting art world overlap with like not just who's on that blacklist, but like who is involved in the art world and is, yeah, would be on that list. Okay, I know it's getting well past our 1 p.m. Jody and I are available for questions. We're always on email, and next month's session is going to focus on understanding building energy emissions. And we hope to see all of you there. We will have another guest speaker. It will be a real fun time.